Close your eyes and let yourself drift. You are not here in your bed, with the modern world humming faintly outside your window. Instead, you are stepping slowly, softly, into a city of marble and gold, where the air itself feels heavy with incense and whispers of power. This is Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, and it is the year when the empire stands tall, proud, and unbroken. The first thing you notice is the shimmer. Sunlight strikes the golden dome of the Hagia Sophia, and it dazzles you so much that you almost shield your eyes. But you don't turn away, because the sight is irresistible. That dome seems to float, impossibly suspended between earth and heaven, a symbol of a city that calls. Itself the new Rome. Streets below are alive with movement, merchants shouting, bells ringing from churches, and processions weaving through narrow, twisting lanes. The empire is rich, unimaginably rich, and everywhere you look, you feel that wealth spilling into your senses. You drift through the markets, where silks from China ripple in the breeze, dyed in colors so deep they almost glow. Spices arrive here from India and Arabia, each scent sharp and intoxicating. Cloves, the coins exchanged between hands, carry the stamp of the emperor, a figure who seems at once distant, godlike, and yet present in every corner of the city. He is ruler of a realm that stretches across seas and mountains, binding together Greeks, Armenians, Slavs, Arabs, and countless others beneath the same purple authority. As you move deeper into the empire's heart, the sounds blur into something almost like a lullaby. Hoofbeats clattering against stone, chants drifting from cloisters, the steady hum of ships unloading at the harbor. You can feel the empire's arteries pulsing. Trade flows from every direction: wheat from Egypt, wine from the Aegean, furs from the cold forests beyond the Danube. You sense a world perfectly balanced, perfectly alive, as though nothing could shake its grandeur. And yet, it isn't just wealth that surrounds you. It's a sense of order, of continuity. The Byzantines know themselves as Romans, heirs of an eternal empire. Laws are carefully written, courts carefully judged, armies carefully drilled. You stand in the great Hippodrome, where the crowds roar for the charioteers blue against green, their shouts echoing like waves. For a moment, you feel caught in that sea of voices, swept up in the passion of a people who believe their empire is destined to last forever. At night, torches glow on the sea walls, stretching for miles, unbroken stone against the darkness. You walk slowly, your steps echoing, and you feel the strength of those defenses. 3 mighty layers of fortification, thicker than you could imagine, crowned with towers, watching the horizon for enemies that never seem to get close. Standing there in the soft night air, with the sea gently lapping against the stone, you almost believe what the Byzantines believe, that this city, this empire, cannot fall. The emperor himself feels like a presence hovering above you. You picture him in the great palace, walls covered with mosaics of gold and glass, where every detail tells you that here resides a man chosen by God. His robes shimmer with purple, a color no ordinary person is allowed to wear, and his crown glitters with jewels that catch the candlelight. He rules as both Caesar and priest, as earthly monarch and guardian of heaven's order. To see him in person, even from a distance, would leave you trembling, your breath caught in your throat. And as you drift through this world, something strange happens. You feel not just like an observer, but like a participant. The streets feel familiar beneath your feet, the chants comforting in your ears, the city's rhythm matching the beating of your heart. The empire seems endless. You cannot see its borders, only its confidence, its glow, its power, a whisper in the shadows. A merchant haggles too fiercely, desperate for coin. A priest mutters about a doctrine, bitter against another. A soldier stands watch, but his eyes look weary, uncertain. These are small things, tiny cracks, almost invisible against the brilliance of marble and gold. You might ignore them, if you wish. Most people do. But if you listen closely, they are their seeds of troubles to come, waiting patiently beneath the surface. Still, for now, the empire rests in its glory. You allow yourself to sink into it, to float on its wealth, its rituals, its certainty. The domes glisten, the walls stand strong, the markets overflow, and the people dream that their emperor rules a world without end. And you, standing in the midst of it all, cannot help but believe them because the illusion is complete, perfect, and irresistible. And so, as you breathe slowly, evenly, letting your body grow heavy against your bed, you carry with you the image of a city that glows in the night, its towers reaching skyward, its chants drifting into the stars. The Byzantine Empire, at its height, pulls you into its embrace, whispering softly that it will never let you go. You are still walking through the streets of Constantinople, the city glowing with torches and echoes of its greatness. The domes gleam, the palaces shimmer, and the harbors overflow with ships. And yet, as you move more slowly, more quietly, you begin to sense the fragility hidden beneath all this strength. It begins not with battles or sieges, but with small signs, the sort of things people living in the moment rarely notice. An official grows greedy, taking bribes to overlook attacks. A noble family whispers in private, plotting for power. Farmers in faraway provinces complain of the weight of levies, their voices too faint to reach the capital. The empire looks invincible from the outside, but inside there are murmurs of discontent, hairline cracks in the stone. The land itself strains under the empire's ambitions. The fields of Anatolia feed the soldiers, but endless campaigning drains them. Crops fail some years, and when the harvest is thin, the countryside suffers while the capital still gleams. The peasants bend under the load, and though they do not rebel openly, their quiet anger lingers like a shadow at the edges of the empire. You drift further into this uneasy calm, and you hear stories of the borders. The Danube frontier is never quiet. Traders slip across, testing the empire's watchfulness. To the east, beyond the mountains and plains, new powers stir, Arab forces, horsemen swift and deadly, testing the edges of Byzantine control. The soldiers guard the frontiers with discipline, but their pay is often late, their supplies thin, their loyalty strained. In the heart of the empire, you notice another kind of crack, one born not of hunger or war, but of faith. Byzantium prides itself on being the guardian of true Christianity, but with every generation, new debates arise. Is Christ's nature fully divine or partly human? Should icons of saints be worshipped or shunned? Priests argue endlessly, monks withdraw in protest, emperors intervene with decrees. For the faithful, it feels like life itself, salvation itself is at stake. For the empire, these quarrels are seeds of division, sown again and again in soil already restless. You wander through the palace corridors in your mind, and you see the emperor surrounded not only by advisors but by schemers. To rule Byzantium is to balance constantly between the army, the church, the nobles, the merchants, the common people. A wrong word, a careless tax. An unpopular ally could turn loyalty into betrayal overnight. The purple robes are dazzling, but they are also unbearably heavy, carrying the weight of an empire that can crumble as easily as it can dazzle. And so, you sense this tension, like a faint crack in marble, almost invisible unless you lean close. The markets still bustle, the walls still stand, the processions still dazzle, but behind it, you can feel the strain. You feel the empire beginning to stretch itself thin. Too many enemies at the borders, too many disputes within, too much pressure on its people. Still, no one around you truly believes it yet. The citizens of Constantinople live their lives as if the empire will go on forever. They argue in the taverns, they cheer in the Hippodrome, they light their candles in the churches. The cracks are there, but they are quiet, subtle, waiting. And as you walk slowly back through the city gates, you cannot shake the feeling that the empire's glory is not as unshakable as it seemed, that something vast, something powerful, has begun to shift. The decline will not come in a single moment, but in countless small ones, almost imperceptibly, until one day it will no longer be possible to ignore. You are still drifting through the Byzantine world, and now the air feels heavier, thicker, not with the smell of spices or the sound of merchants, but with voices raised in prayer and sometimes in argument. Religion is everywhere in this empire. It fills the streets with processions, it glitters in mosaics, it echoes in the endless chants of monks. But where there is deep devotion, there is also division, and you feel yourself pulled into the heart of those quarrels. You walk past the Hagia Sophia again, its dome shimmering in the daylight, its cavernous interior filled with light and shadow. Candles flicker along the marble floors, and the scent of incense lingers in the air. At first, the stillness comforts you, but then you notice groups of people whispering, debating, sometimes shouting. To outsiders, the Byzantines may look united under one cross, one faith, but when you listen closer, you hear how sharp their disagreements truly are. For centuries, the empire has argued about the very nature of Christ. Is he divine and human in equal measure, or something else, more mysterious? Councils gather, bishops thunder, emperors issue decrees, but the debates never really end. Every time one question seems settled, another rises. You feel the tension. To disagree is not just to hold a different opinion, but to risk being called a heretic, to risk exile, even death. These arguments are not abstract. They seep into the daily life of the empire. A farmer in Anatolia may refuse to follow a priest he believes is preaching falsely. A noble may use a theological quarrel as a weapon against a rival. Even emperors are caught if they take the wrong side. They may face rebellion from the church or the army. Faith is not only spiritual here, it is political, dangerous, and endlessly alive. You sense the storm most strongly in the controversy over images of Christ and the saints. In churches across the empire, icons shine with gold and deep color, kissed and venerated by worshippers who believe. These images bring them closer to the divine, but others denounce them as idols, claiming that to bow before painted wood is to betray the truth of God. The empire trembles as emperors order icons stripped from churches, smashed in public squares, burned in fire. Monks resist, clinging to the images, sometimes with their lives. Families divide, cities riot, faith itself becomes a battlefield. Walking through these moments, you see how devotion both strengthens and weakens the empire. It binds people in ritual and belief, but it also splits them apart, setting neighbor against neighbor, brother against brother. The same faith that inspires magnificent churches and soaring hymns also fuels suspicion and persecution. In the monasteries, far from the noise of Constantinople, monks retreat into silence, their lives dedicated to prayer. But even here, the tensions seep in. Some monks fast to extremes, denouncing others as too soft. Some believe the empire has strayed, that only through purity and rejection of worldly power can salvation be found. The empire's heart beats with this struggle, between the world of wealth and palaces, and the world of cloisters and asceticism. As you drift deeper into this religious landscape, you feel both awe and unease. The Byzantines see themselves as the defenders of true Christianity, chosen to preserve the faith against heresy and against Islam to the east. Yet, within their own walls, they quarrel endlessly about what true really means. These divisions do not destroy the empire immediately, but they weaken its unity, draining energy, trust, and strength. And so, while the domes of Constantinople still rise proudly, while the chants still echo into the night, you can feel something stirring beneath the surface. The faith that should unite them all instead begins to carve deep lines through their society. the empire remains glorious. But you sense how fragile that glory has become, how quickly unity can be broken when faith itself becomes a weapon. You leave the Hagia Sophia, the incense still clinging to your senses, and step back into the city. The arguments fade into whispers. The chants soften into a lull, but the unease remains with you. The Byzantines will carry these tensions forward, and in time, the empire itself will feel their weight. You drift further along the corridors of time, and the glow of Constantinople begins to feel less secure. The empire still stands tall, but on the horizon, shadows gather. They are not whispers within the city now, not murmurs of monks or cracks in marble, but forces rising beyond its borders, new rivals, fierce and hungry. Who will test the strength of Byzantium again and again? The first shadows come from the east. Hear the thunder of hooves across deserts and plains. Relentless armies of the Islamic Caliph. For centuries, Byzantium has fought them, sometimes winning, sometimes retreating, but always bleeding strength. Cities that once flew the imperial banner, Antioch, Jerusalem, Alexandria, half slipped away, pulled into another orbit. With each loss, Byzantium feels its sphere shrinking, its faith more isolated, its position more precarious. And yet, you notice how the empire adapts. The great walls of Constantinople stand firm, the navy masters the sea. Greek fire hissing and blazing across the waves like a weapon born of legend. Still, the struggle against the caliphates never ends. It is a slow grinding, a war of endurance, and every year, Byzantium grows a little more weary. Across the forests and rivers, the Bulgars rise as a force to be reckoned with. They are fierce, stubborn, and determined to carve their place in history. Again and again, their warriors clash with Byzantine armies. Sometimes the empire crushes them, but other times, the Bulgars strike deep into imperial lands, leaving behind smoke and ashes. For the first time, Byzantium faces not just distant threats, but enemies pressing hard against its very heartlands. And in the west, once the empire had seen itself as the sole heir of Rome. But now new powers emerge in Europe. The Franks under Charlemagne rise, claiming the title of Emperor of the Romans. You can feel the sting of this challenge. Byzantium, proud in its ancient legacy, now sees pretenders rising in the west, threatening to strip away its claim to universal rule. The unity of Christendom phrase, as power becomes a contest between East and West. Walking through these centuries in your mind, you feel the empire surrounded. Every direction brings pressure. Islamic powers to the east and south, Bulgars and Slavs to the north, ambitious kings and popes to the west. Byzantium still glitters, but the ring around it tightens. Each new rival forces the empire to stretch its resources, to divide its armies, to gamble on survival. And yet, the city does not collapse. Constantinople still dazzles. The markets still hum. The Hagia Sophia still glows with candlelight. The empire resists, bends, endures, but you sense the cost. Every battle fought drains its treasury. Every rival faced leaves it slightly weaker, slightly more vulnerable. You linger on the feeling of an empire encircled, holding its ground but no longer invincible. Rivals rise because history never stands still. And Byzantium must fight not only to preserve its glory, but to simply exist. And as you drift deeper into this story, you realize the age of effortless dominance is gone. The empire is entering a long twilight, where every triumph comes with a price, and every rival leaves another scar. You have followed the empire through cracks and quarrels, through rising rivals and endless pressures, and you might expect the story to continue only downward, like a stone rolling steadily downhill. But suddenly, you find yourself in a different atmosphere, as though the clouds part. This is the Macedonian dynasty, a line of emperors who bring not decline, but revival, one last great flowering of Byzantine power and culture. You walk again through Constantinople, and the city feels renewed. The streets are alive, not just with trade, but with learning and art. Scribes bend over their manuscripts, copying ancient texts with careful hands, their reed pens scratching softly across parchment. Libraries swell with knowledge, works of Greek philosophy preserved and studied, legal codes rewritten and clarified. You feel as though the empire, instead of fading, has drawn strength from its struggles, channeling energy into wisdom and beauty. At court, emperors of the Macedonian line rule with firmness and vision. Basil I, who rose from humble beginnings, sets the dynasty in motion, and those who follow him expand its power. You sense there authority not only in the glitter of the palace but in the reach of their armies. Campaigns in the Balkans push back the Bulgars. Victories in the east reclaim lost ground from Arab rivals. Slowly, carefully, Byzantium regains its footing, not as the universal empire of old, but as a state still capable of commanding respect. The countryside reflects this renewal. Farmers work their fields more securely, their grain flowing into markets. Trade flourishes again, caravans arriving with silks and gems, ships carrying wine and oil across the seas. The empire feels less fragile, more confident, as though it has found a second wind. You wander through churches being built or renewed, their walls covered in glittering mosaics. Saints gaze down at you in indigo and gold, their faces serene, their presence luminous. Hymns rise, echoing through the domes, filling the air with something both solemn and uplifting. It is not only power that revives here, but spirit. The Byzantines believe again in their destiny, their role as guardians of both Rome and faith. Art thrives in this era. The icons, once torn down in fury, return to their places of honor. Painters craft them with reverence, layering gold and color, every line meant to open a window to the divine. You see them glowing in dim chapels, kissed by worshippers. They are no longer points of division, but symbols of unity and devotion. And yet, the Macedonian Renaissance is not just about faith or art. The emperors strengthen the laws, codifying them in volumes that will echo across centuries. The Basilica, a great legal text, refines Roman law for a new age. You can almost hear the rustle of parchment, the murmured debates of scholars, the certainty that the empire still carries the wisdom of Rome itself. The people, too, feel this revival. In the markets, there is more laughter, more hope. Craftsmen hammer bronze and carve marble with renewed energy. Fishermen haul in their nets with pride, knowing their labor feeds a city that is alive again. Even in the Hippodrome, the cheers feel more joyous, less desperate. For a moment, the shadow of decline seems to lift. Still, as you walk through this golden interlude, you notice the fragility hidden within. The strength depends heavily on wise emperors, incapable rulers who can balance power with vision. You sense that if weak hands take the throne, this revival could crumble. But for now, under the Macedonian dynasty, Byzantium shines again, surprising even itself with its resilience. And as you drift with this vision, you cannot help but marvel at the persistence of the empire. Time and again, it seemed ready to collapse, yet it found a way to rise. The Macedonian Renaissance is proof of that, and reminder that even in decline, there can be moments of brilliance, bursts of life that light the path before the darkness returns. So you linger in this age of renewal, letting its glow warm you. The mosaics gleam, the armies march. Byzantium, once more, feels eternal. And you, floating through its streets and palaces, let yourself believe it, knowing, deep down, that this brightness is precious precisely because it cannot last forever.